Good morning. I believe we have Love Light Ananda out there and some other folks. Nobody's showing up in the chat though. It takes a while. So in the meantime, I'm just going to sit here and I'm going to shift from side to side like that. No, actually, what am I going to do? Um, talk about the weather, the unseasonably warm weather. I don't know what that means really. But I remember when I was a kid, there was a certain time of year when we could just look forward to, it was around this time, we could look forward to just, snow. Snow. Do y'all remember snow? We look forward to snow and snow days. I don't know when the last time, and maybe I'm not in school, so I don't know if these things happen or don't happen, but I don't remember the last time that there was a snow day during the school year. And it was usually on those snow days that young people, kids, kids really, would go out in the neighborhood and they would get a shovel and they would go and they would shovel their neighbors' lawns. And there was some transaction in it, right? There was some transaction. Usually, the neighbor would give, the kids a couple of bucks, which for me in those days, like a couple of bucks for, back in those days, it's a while ago. Back in those days, a couple of bucks was a, decent little amount of money. And it was usually that money that me and my brothers would use to buy Christmas gifts for our parents because, we celebrate Christmas. And those days are gone for a number of reasons, right? One, we don't really get snow days, like I said before. And the other thing is that because of the economic situation we find ourselves in this country, people are so desperate for work and so desperate for money that now, when it snows, if there's an opportunity for somebody to go out and shovel snow, it's usually, an unemployed adult who's out there with a shovel. So, Love Light Ananda, good morning. Hi, Reg. We've got a little snow on the ground this morning. Where are you again? I know you're not in. I know you're not on the West Coast, but I'm not sure where you are. Are you in the States or are you in? Where are you? You don't have to give away your location because I know everybody's under surveillance these days and they don't want people to know where they are. Um, I'm on Mars, everyone, in case you come looking for me. I am on Mars. Kind of funny, kind of a funny story. So I'm working on this play, this piece, and actually completed my first draft, which I sent to Jessica Gordon Nemhard. In that the play is really inspired by their book Collective Courage, which is available through Penn State University Press. And I keep threatening to include a link, but it's just so easy to, just do an internet search for Jessica Gordon Nemhard. I'm going to type it into the box here. Mostly so I have something to look at as I'm saying what's going on. Yeah, Jessica Gordon Nemhard. And the last name is N-E-M as in Mary, B as in boy, H-A-R-D as in David, Nemhard. And so sent really the first draft, which was pretty rough, but I wanted to, since the play is inspired by an existing work, I wanted to get a sense that, I wanted Jessica to get a sense that, this is how the material is being used, and this is how certain ideas that are in the book are showing up in the piece. I want to make sure that I'm not just Ah, that's interesting. Although I don't know if I want to be. Love Lightananda says you could get credit for books you recommend via Amazon links, and I don't know. I just don't know how I feel about it. I've been trying to, I've been encouraging people. You can get the book as a PDF, and there are several ways to get access by simply by doing a search for the book for the PDF. Several sources come up. It's much less expensive. Obviously, it's about a third of the cost to purchase it as a PDF online, and so I've been encouraging that. And I don't know that um, Amazon has any deals like that. Also, one can get it through the press, and depending on if you're part of an organization and you want to do some kind of a group thing, you might try um, reaching out to Jessica Gordon Nemhart through John Jay through John Jay College of Law, Criminal Law, which is I'm going to be teaching at John Jay College of Criminal Law next semester. I don't know. It's really odd to just like what? I'm a kid. I'm supposed to be out on the playground. Like I feel like I'm supposed to be out on the playground and like I'm teaching at a university. I don't even know what that's about, but that's what it is. So the funny story is I reached I was working on the draft, and there's a point in the draft where there's some interaction with the federal with some federal agents, and so I wanted to know like what is it what do federal agents say when they come into your space and they're like, hey, we're federal agents and we're coming in here and this is what we're doing. So I've been doing a lot of research just looking for testimonies of people talking about their experiences with federal agents. But I thought, maybe, just maybe, on a long shot, they might accept a call at the FBI and just tell me, just tell me. So I called the FBI, everyone. I called the FBI, and no one ended up taking my call, and I got some access to some emails, and I might write to one of these emails and see if there's anyone who would get back to me and just do like a brief interview and just talk about some procedures. But I also found um, some procedural handbooks that were available. They were quite redacted, but I found some procedural manuals from the FBI. And of course, as I'm reading through there, all kinds of other things come up. Well, first of all, I was very aware that I was on the phone with the FBI, and I'm thinking, are they already monitoring my calls? I don't know. Are they monitoring this conversation? I don't know. Hopefully I'm not that important. Hopefully there are many, many, many more important things to do. So hey, Lucas, Gabrielle has joined us in the chat this morning, and Mike on Raw. Good morning. So I was just telling the story about, calling the FBI. It was interesting while I was reading through, thank you for the likes, Mike on Raw. While I was reading through the procedural manuals, I was looking for, I just happened to come across this one section where they were talking about how terrorism is basically defined by the federal government. And it was interesting because I realized that there were many conversations that have been had about what is terrorist activity, what is not terrorist activity. But when one looks at the procedures around how certain types of crimes are investigated, it's actually a really cool way to learn how these things are defined, because they can seem really amorphous, and they can seem like very vague. But when you look at when you look at procedural handbooks from the institutions that are responsible for prosecuting crimes, you can find answers to things. Like when I was trying to learn more about the stop, question, and frisk, for example, back during that whole campaign, which I've told stories about, it worked out. It was a good thing. Although there's some more ramping up that's going on in terms of police community interactions, at least in New York City. But I learned a lot about, what the law says about certain types of behavior, like what the law describes as, what is in a procedural handbook, what is described as suspicious behavior, for example. Like all these things may seem very vague when we're having these conversations about them, but they exist in more concrete forms in these procedural manuals. So I would suggest that if you have never looked through the procedural manual of a government agency or a city agency that deals with a particular thing that you're interested in, and you're interested in like maybe doing some type of a campaign to change the way um, the way that agency interacts with the general public, to look at things from their perspective. So yeah, so there's that. Yeah, yeah, there's that. So how are folks? I hope people are well this morning. It's my brother's birthday. Um, so I have two brothers, at least two brothers that I know of. And I'm the youngest of three brothers. And uh, one of them, one of them had a birthday today. That's probably way too much information to be sharing online. I don't know. It's probably too much information to be sharing because now people are going to go look up my brother and stuff like that. I don't know. I hope he doesn't get in trouble because of me. Um, they might go hold my brother hostage so that I stop making videos. Lucas Gabriel says, I'm doing well. I did some of the project we talked about last time. Oh, nice. That's great. So maybe you'll have an update for that. And we were talking about languages that are disappearing. Languages. And it's interesting because after our conversation, um, it came to my attention the way that, the relationship to language that I have, and that in the relationship, the interactions around language that occur in certain spaces. I ended up in a conversation with someone that was talking about um, a particular conference that I was planning to attend and to contribute to, and they were pointing out that just many of the people who were engaged in that conference happened to be people who speak a particular language, and so that they were shaping the conference in some ways to address that. And I thought that there's something, at the same time, there's something very kind of progressive and forward thinking about that. But then I think to myself that there are so many others who, um, because we are, emphasizing a particular group, that we may be de-emphasizing others who won't have access. And so might we be thinking about tools that create more democratic spaces when it comes to language? And then, of course, what does that do in terms of like the pursuit of particular languages? If we were able to, for example, create a machine that could instantly translate all languages, and so I could be wearing these headphones and I could be hearing you speak in the language that I understand, in the language of my choice, while you spoke in the language of your choice. Would a tool like that end up um, uh, I guess it would make it in some ways less important for us to emphasize key languages, to emphasize languages as like the major languages of the world, because people would just speak. But then, of course, would it take into account things like dialects? I don't know. I'm dreaming. I'm dreaming. So it's so weird because I feel very low energy today, but there's so many cool things that are going on. I'm getting ready to travel back to Detroit. Obviously, I'm going to be traveling back to Detroit at the end of the semester, so the semester will end, and then I will hop in a car, and I'm going to be traveling with a friend of mine who's an artist, and I've told you all before that I'm going to be bringing a set of paintings. Uh, uh, I'm going to be bringing a set of paintings to Alt Space, and these are the paintings that were um, they're bovine paintings that were taken on a sanctuary, in an animal sanctuary. So yeah, that's kind of cool. Lucas Gabriel says, I also started a new project, the Surname Project. Oh, that's going to be, I'm interested in hearing about that as well. So yeah, I hope some folks will jump on and do some chatting with me. I'm looking forward to that. Love Light Ananda says, in America, people need to have a way to be on the same page. A common language, in our case, English, is important. Yeah, I think that these are really important questions because even as I think about making space, for example, at a conference for people who may speak different languages, there often will be in this particular conference there will be sessions that will be held in a language that I speak, but I know that a lot of people in the room don't speak. In fact, a majority of people in the room don't speak. And so then how is it in the service of that group that might be marginalized to be giving a presentation that is, supposed to kind of bring us all together around an idea if many of the people in the room don't understand what it is that they're saying. So yeah, I'm not sure what that's about. So it's saying here that we have someone joining us. It's their first time on YouNow. It's not giving me your name though. So, but anyway, anybody who's joining us for the first time on YouNow, please welcome. Congratulations, you made it, and thanks for making it to this broadcast. What else is going on? So we had our first rehearsal of the Off the Hook program. So if you want to learn a little bit more about the Off the Hook program, you can go to the website for my theater company, which is redhooktheater.org. Yeah, and it's called the Off the Hook program. We got some young people from the neighborhood and did a writing workshop with them. We went on a trip up to Purchase College in Purchase, New York. And they wrote plays and they come back and we started rehearsal for those plays yesterday. So it was really cool to be in a room with those young people and their families, and yeah, to be in a room with those young people and their families and start working on these plays. Well, we haven't really gotten into the topic. I'm just kind of chatting right now, just kind of getting the room warmed up. But I do have a topic that I wanted to address because I'm interested to know what all of you think about it. And this is the idea of impeaching Donald Trump, which I don't know how I feel about it. I don't really have a position on impeaching Donald Trump. I can say that I'm not necessarily happy that Donald Trump is the president of the United States. But so a few people have come in. So Elizabeth K, welcome, and Chickpea Sarni, welcome to the broadcast. Is there anybody else who came in that I didn't notice? At least anybody whose name is showing. No other names are showing. So anyway, welcome. So yeah, that's what I was interested in talking about, this idea of impeaching Donald Trump and like what are the pros and cons of impeaching Donald Trump? So someone has asked, what has he done that warrants it? I'm in a whole other, I'm over here, y'all. So when people are talking about, Isabel, it's pronounced Isabel. I don't know, what did I say? Because I'm looking at it and it definitely says Isabel. Definitely says Isabel there. So all that to say, what has Donald Trump done to be impeached? I don't know. Like, to me, it gets so granular. It's like impeaching Donald Trump, but there's all this other stuff. Like, that's just, I don't even want to say that that's just the head of the snake. You know what I mean? It's like, Lucas Gabriel says, I think Mike Pence could be president. Then if he's impeached, okay, Mike Pence would become president if Donald Trump were impeached. Yes. Oh, yeah. I said Elizabeth. Yeah, that was just me misspeaking. No. It's just too many things going on. Too many things going on right now. But yes, so Isabel K, greetings. My cheer coach should be present. I'm not sure what that means. I hope we're going to find out. Let me see. For Trump, the thing that could cause it right now would be the working with the Russians to sway the elections. Yes, it's possible. Is that proven though, Mike, or is it still conspiracy? Well, the word conspiracy is a little strong here. I mean, the word conspiracy, let's not call it a conspiracy. It's an investigation. Conspiracy is like, did y'all hear so and so, so and so? And you're like, you're theorizing about. But no, some people did some things that are wrong, and the question is, was Donald Trump involved? So it's not necessarily a conspiracy. It's a it's an investigation, and the fact that it's an investigation takes it well removes it from the realm of conspiracy. It is a fact. It is now it's an operational fact that something happened with foreign nationals. There was something happened between U.S. nationals and foreign nationals that was inappropriate. Who was involved? That's all that's left to be determined is who was involved, right? So, but that's beside the point. The point is, what does it mean to have Donald Trump impeached? Is somehow the impeachment of Donald Trump being seen now as the silver bullet in creating the world that we want to see? And is it even a step in creating that world that we want to see? How much of impeaching the president really speaks to the investment of the citizens in electoral politics, believing that someone sitting in an office somewhere who has been empowered in a particular way is going to make the changes that we want to see without our direct participation. And it somehow de-emphasizes the requirement that we be more directly involved in our governance. So getting rid of so Donald Trump goes, and then Pence steps in, and like, I don't know how I feel about Pence. It's neither here nor there. These are people. These are changeable people. These are flawed people who knows what pressures are on any of these individuals to behave in a certain way. Yes, right. YouNow 974. Your name, there's not really a name showing up, but it says, I personally think that your country is too large for effective governance by such a small group. I hear what you're saying. I tend to agree. There's just a lot of us here, and to have like an individual that's empowered to make decisions across a country where there are so many differing ways of thinking about the world, and we are kind of brought together in these United States, but honestly, depending on where you are in the country, you may as well be in a different country, if not a different planet, right? So someone else says, it's interesting. Did you know the famous Amber Rose called Trump the Antichrist because he's kind of beloved by others? I'm not sure what that's about. My question is, what is the plan to replace him? Because Pence and Ryan are equally bad. I need to hear solutions to that problem as well. Source, it's hard to say because the parties that are spouting either side of the argument are both invested in the outcome. Yeah. So here's again, it's like this hot mess of what we call our political leadership, right? The Congress, right? Our legislators, right? Our our executive branch, right? So we have these very flawed individuals that have been empowered to basically just go do stuff, right? And because they are empowered to go and do stuff, it means that they can be exploited, and they can be corrupted by all kinds of other by their personal, like a family member, somebody who they love, can say, hey, do this because it's important to me, right? So they're not necessarily compelled to take into mind the interests of their constituents, right? There's nothing that says any political leader has to do what their constituents want, right? They are empowered to do things um, in any way that they see fit, right? And then, every now and then there's an opportunity for them to be, removed from office, and that's either through impeachment, which just leads to having another person who's just as susceptible to that kind of corruption, right? Um, no, 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 you ain't gonna get no, red for president, no, I'm not there. Um, I more and more see myself as a kind of lead from behind kind of person, and it's not an act of cowardice, right? Because I run my mouth and say all kinds of things that could get me in trouble. But I do not believe that there is any solution that does not involve, the organization of masses of people to be more engaged in self-governance. I just don't see that there's a solution to that, right? I do think this though. There is a positive note here in the Trump impeachment scenario. That's if, obviously if something is wrong, right? And honestly speaking, even if nothing is seen as wrong, if there is a mass movement that seeks to remove Donald Trump from office, and then that movement succeeds, what it does is it shows people that, yeah, we can do things if we organize, right? We see that the effective way to take care of business is to have a mass movement. So there is the promise that somehow some kind of organic movement building to see Donald Trump impeached could have a positive effect on, the society at large, and we could see that, oh, this is how we make change, by doing things together. Obviously a lot of coalition would have to be built to make something like that happen. A people initiated, people instigated impeachment of a president would take, a lot of coalition building and grassroots movement, grassroots building, right? Because certainly the powers that be are not going to just pay to have Donald Trump impeached, right? So, Mike, thanks for inviting 95 fans to the broadcast. So get in, but the question is, whose pocket are they in, right? So all that stuff, right? So yeah, we're aware. I don't think it will matter, Mike, or any conservative that didn't like Trump, plus all the hate hype for inactive Democrats will mean the Democratic, yeah, all of that stuff, right? So I think we're on the same page. I think that there's not a solution in the impeachment of Donald Trump. I'm in agreement with that. I do not think that there is a solution in the impeachment of Donald Trump, because I think that there's just going to be, first of all, we're not aware of the forces that are really responsible for what's happening in the world. We just see this Donald Trump person making a lot of noise, but nothing happens without the collusion of the, political elite en masse, and the I don't want to use a word like oligarchy, but the people who have all the money and hold all the resources, right, who get to make the decisions about how those things are allocated, right? So Lucas Gabriel says, it's interesting because it's like we're back in the 1980s when Reagan was president in many ways, from punk rock music coming back and other trends. It's possible, quite possible. But again, how does this address our, there's still going to be, regardless of what happens, if there's a mass movement and somehow we see the impeachment of Donald Trump, right? There's still a disconnect that has to be addressed. And that is people, if we're using all of this energy to impeach the president, couldn't we use that same energy to do something about the polluting that's happening in the world, right? And the kind of rape, I hate to say rape of the earth, because I know that kind of language becomes very charged and is alienating to some people. But when you think about what is happening to the planet, the violence that's happening to the planet, and the planet not having, I don't see the earth as an inanimate object. It's an organism, right? It has a nucleus. And the way that we invade the planet, right? And we extract at will whatever it is that we think is going to make us money, really make us money. That's a very particular type of violence. So, do we think that there is any currently large enough political party capable of having a candidate worth voting for? So again, we go back to this idea, is it about having the right candidate, or is it about organizing some kind of a mass movement? And is it that we're looking for a candidate that is going to somehow inspire a mass movement? I don't think that that's going to happen. I don't think that that's going to happen. I feel like those things are incongruent. I feel like there are conversations that we almost can't have at the same time. And I'm inspired in part because I've been reading a book called Jackson Rising, which has to do with the kind of organizing that's happening in Jackson, Mississippi right now, in part around the election of Chokwe Lumumba, the father originally in 2013, and then the son more recently, I believe it was last year. And this whole idea of what is being called the Jackson-Kush Plan. And as part of the Jackson-Kush Plan, there is the outlining of a way to start rethinking society and the way we govern ourselves. And it's very interesting to me because in the Jackson-Kush Plan, they start with this idea of local assemblies, people in communities meeting with some regularity to talk about the things that they need and building an agenda for their communities through these, general assemblies, right? I'm with you with the whole, French Revolution, Russian Revolution, and all of those things, but this is coming from a different place, right? This is simply like bringing people together and creating a space where the average citizen, in a way that is practical, can come together on a regular basis to talk about what's happening in their neighborhoods. Now, it might sound like a lot, but we got church. We got people who go to church every Sunday and listen to whatever it is that they listen to. Could we somehow, I don't want to say we want to replace church, but could we somehow have some kind of a gathering where, people were brought together to have discussions, and I don't know what to say about it. It could be they could be volunteer, but if it's difficult for people, you might kind of combine it with some kind of like a stipend, like you get your assembly card stamped and you get something for it in return. I don't know, you get a discount on a meal, a vegan meal, I hope, but I don't know, some way to encourage people to be engaged, to make it, I don't want to say mandatory, but to make it desirable for people to come together on a regular basis, to discuss their needs, bring them together, have agendas, discuss like the important topics, and then to have that be made part of whatever the municipal government's agenda is, right? So this is like things that are happening on a local level, so that we can marry this idea of community gathering, community assemblies, direct democracy affecting somehow decisions that are being made by the representatives of those people, right? So that the assembly maybe sends their person, the person who's the council member could be the person who is the representative of the assembly, not the leader of the assembly, but the representative of the assembly, right? And then also the other part of the Jackson-Kush Plan is developing a cooperative economy, a solidarity economy, because none of these things happen without, having political power is the same, at least in the United States, as having, wealth, right? As having control of capital and resources. So figuring out then ways to empower communities by making sure that they have some kind of economic sovereignty. I don't know. So Michael Monroe says, way different dynamic today. I'm not sure what that. Yes. So, and I think that's Michael Monroe responding to YouNow 974, bringing up the Russian Revolution, the French Revolution. And let's think about it. Those revolutions didn't result in like the, you know, the full emancipation of humanity, right? Those led to a shift in, you know, in power from one group to another. And but those groups now, you know, those are the groups that are, you know, those groups have developed into um, the you know, world of globalization that we see now, right? That's those folks, right? So YouNow 974 says people haven't changed though, just the methods of manipulation. Yeah. So I mean, if what we're talking about is the way that people in general have their liberties, give away their liberties to a group of people who are then responsible for doing things in their interest, but then don't. But then don't. Right. So YouNow 974. The problem was that the vanguard never returned the promised power to the proletariat. And the question is it up to anybody to give people their liberty? Right? So, you know, the vanguard promised power to the proletariat. If we like look at that language, right? And I know that you're just being accurate in terms of what happened historically, but just look at that. Like the expectation that somebody is supposed to give me freedom, right? These are not things that are bestowed on us. These are things that we are born with and that we have to fight to maintain. And we fight for them in the ways that we fight for them. We can fight for them either by organizing them ourselves or, you know, staging some kind of violent revolution, which I don't think is going to work in my case because I'd get creamed. You know what I mean? I'm not going to take a whole bunch of people down the street because we probably wouldn't make it 2 blocks before we got mowed down by somebody. So I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about ways that people can collectively, you know, start to organize and make decisions collectively, and then use whatever collective power they have to start to, you know, maneuver the levers of power in the society that we have. Unless we're talking about a complete dismantling of the system and having, you know, utter, you know, chaos, there have to be some ways that we can work with the system that we have in place, but also thinking about, you know, how can we change that system. And so that's why I thought it would be interesting to have a conversation about the impeachment of Donald Trump, and maybe trying to frame it slightly differently, because my strong sense is that this continued conversation about what's going to happen to Donald Trump gives way too much power to one individual to make that much of a difference in our lives. And that if that person is removed, that we're not going to see. I mean, let's put it this way. I don't want to knock anybody, right? But in terms of the world that we live in, has the world drastically changed? Did the world drastically change between, say, Bush and Barack Obama? Is the world drastically going to change between Barack Obama's presidency and Donald Trump's presidency? Is the world drastically going to change? I'm not sure. I don't think that we believed a year and a half ago, that dropping a bomb, for example, was a good thing, right? I don't think we believed that, and I don't think we believe that today, right? I don't think we want that. So I don't think that our world has shifted drastically. I don't think we're different people because of it. And my belief is that anything that is happening in the world today is likely something that would have happened regardless of who would have been sitting in that office, right? Other than, you know, the rhetoric, other than what we're talking about, that might have changed. But in terms of like the concrete material effects on the world, it is very likely that we would be seeing those same things. So I'm not sure. YouNow says, I think we should focus on the right way to govern as opposed to the way to remove the problem for as long as possible. Yeah, so I think we happen to be on this. I think we happen to be on the same page. YouNow 927, thinking about how we govern, like really thinking about how is it that we govern and what is it that we want from the government. Theo S., welcome to the broadcast. Theo S. Says, Saul Newman, post-anarchism from revolution to rebellion, and offered that as a link. So I hope people saw that. And I always get a little scared when I copy and paste things that I'm going to disappear. All right, thank you for that. So, any thoughts? Anybody want to talk about it before we end? We have about 15 minutes or so left in the broadcast, so I'm happy to have anybody jump on and offer their opinion on those things. Now, I've also had some bad news. There was a friend of ours who is part of the theater of the world of the theater of the oppressed, at least in New York City, and I say just generally, it's a fairly tight knit community. We may not all get along, but people tend to know each other, and so without, I don't want to put up a whole thing on the street, but a dear friend of ours passed away a week ago, and I've just been finding out about it, and so I have kind of trying to direct some of my energy to figuring out, like, what am I going to do to be supportive, because it's not just a question of how to support the families of individuals when things happen on an institutional level, but like, how do we make sure that those institutions can survive when people who've played a major role in keeping those institutions afloat leave us. And something similar happened in Detroit with the transition of Grace Lee Boggs. And so, yeah, that's kind of on my mind right now. So I'm going to be, when I get off, I'm going to actually call the person who was the partner of this individual who passed away, and just kind of figure out, what I could do, because my sense is that person provided a lot of technical support in terms of like the sending out of emails and things like that. Those are little things that we don't think about until the person who's doing them is not there. So, but so that's something that's on my mind, and I also imagine that there's going to be some celebration of that person's life coming up, and I want to find out and like make sure that it's not today and that I'm not missing it. So Theo S. says, regarding your last stream, new book out called Why Buddhism is True, The Science and Philosophy of Meditation and Enlightenment, by Robert Wrights, talks in the first pages about how his Evolved Psychology book, Non-Zero, was given to Keanu Reeves as homework by directors of The Matrix. Interesting. Oh, Chickpea Sarni says, sorry for your loss. Thank you very much for that. Oh, I understand. I'm talking about the stream where I was talking about the Matrix and the Red Pill community. And yeah, so thanks for that bit of follow-up. So I hope I'm not vanishing. I don't know what happens when I click off the page, but I'm imagining that all of you can still see me. And I haven't actually been watching these videos. Suddenly there's like all this like dust flying through the air. It's like all over the place. Anyway, so that is what was on my mind today. That's what I wanted to talk about and have captured. So all of you know that I've not been making videos. Wait, hold on something. I know this is off topic. What do you think about how Corey Feldman speaking out against Hollywood? Yeah, I don't know. I actually recently, hey, Vegan Called Quest. So the question that just popped up was how, what my thoughts were about Corey Feldman speaking out against Hollywood. So I certainly think that people should, I don't know. I don't have a right. I don't even have a right. I certainly can think about it, but I don't have a right to be judgmental there, because, certainly people should have the freedom to respond to what has happened in their own lives and talk about what has happened in their own lives as they see fit. I'm not sure about Corey Feldman's plan to make a film. I'm not sure that that the film is the solution to the problem. The film might, we might learn a lot of names, but if you know names of people who are, you know, doing things to harm kids, just say the names. Go to the authorities. Go to the FBI. Go to the police. Go and talk to them, right? But maybe the film is not just about. The film may not just be about stopping those people or telling on those people or even protecting other kids. It may be about Corey Feldman trying to find some peace, some personal peace, and some validation. I imagine that if, you could get a whole bunch of people to give $1 million or however many $1 million to make a movie about something that happened, and if that, helped you get over it, then, and it's not hurting for, people to give what money that they are willing to give to the project. So I don't see that there's a problem there. I just don't see how it fits in with a strategy of how to make Hollywood a better place. So yeah, YouNow 974 the film sounds a bit like a money grab. Um, and then Lucas Gabriel says, I know a few big names from a former CIA agent. And I'm, recompensation. Okay. All right. Which I guess is fair, but won't help anyone but him. Yeah, so I'm kind of, I feel like we're on the same page there, that it might be something that Corey Feldman needs to heal, and I'm not going to put a price on healing. I don't know. And if Corey Feldman is willing to put in the work and raise that money to make that film, and it's going to end up being a healing experience for whatever reasons, but yeah. Yeah, I don't like, in terms of like names of people. I'm going to say this. A couple of things have happened recently that have made me very uncomfortable with the way we get introduced to people um, uh, as we get exposed to people. So, for example, like YouNow 974 says Kevin Spacey, Louis C.K., and Harvey Weinstein, right? I don't know anything about the Weinsteins, right? I know that they produce a lot of films. Their names are on a lot of films, right? So when I hear about Harvey Weinstein, I said, I'm like, yeah, I guess that's what Harvey Weinstein did, right? But I don't know Harvey Weinstein. When I hear about Louis C.K., again, I don't know Louis C.K., so it doesn't mean anything for me to hear about this person. And Louis C.K. actually came out and said, yeah, I did these things, right? So I don't know what that means. Kevin Spacey, again, don't have any feelings about them. But what happens when it's somebody that you know? And you hear the name of somebody that you know, and they are being accused of something that just seems a little off. And when it, in terms of assault or, some kind of abuse or inappropriate behavior, in terms of violating people, physically violating people or whatever, making them uncomfortable, I'm not sure. But there was a case recently where a friend of mine was accused of something based on what they had said in a context where they were talking about it as problematic language, right? But because the words were used, they ended up being accused of something, right? Which, as far as I can understand, and I didn't hear the other person's story, although I did see an email that the other person had used where they actually used the word too. So it's like when it becomes more about, oh, I know I have one up on you because I know that, in order to protect this group, there has been a broad category created for certain types of behavior. And so now it doesn't matter if I was the one who, slipped up and used a word out of context, right? Which might deserve don't use that word out of context. You're not, you shouldn't say that, right? Or some kind of corrective action taken versus committing a crime. And we don't know what the difference, we don't know like who in all of this is guilty of what. And so I get it's so overwhelming, but I don't want to take away, again, I don't want to take anybody's power. I don't want to say, and impacts are really, really important, play a major key. But then how do we measure the impacts? If the only measure of the impacts is what someone says happened to them, eventually we're going to be in a world where like you can accuse me of something and I can say that you're accusing me of something has had an impact on me. And so then now we're just going to be caught in this dangerous loop of impact without ever looking at what is like the material effects of these things. So the call out culture can get messy depending on who's doing it. Yeah. Yeah, just put it plain and simply. Vegan Call Quest, to put it plain and simply, yes. Lucas Gabriel says there's politician Nancy Pelosi, Sean John Combs, and Russell Simmons, and I'm guessing that they're being added to the list of people who been engaged in behaviors that are illegal or abusive or have violated other people. But whew, in the meantime, the ice caps are melting, right? And there's like people who are responsible for crimes that are going to have like a material effect on our future. And I'm not saying that these other things shouldn't be dealt with too, but can we get our priorities straight? The person, they just found out that there was lead in the water in Detroit too. That they were saying that the water in Detroit was fine, but it turns out that the water in Detroit is not fine. But the lead story is Harvey Weinstein. What's going on? Right? I had to fire it with, okay, let me see. Lo Kihui says, I had a situation similar to where I had to fire someone for using a word. It was a young black kid who was talking about himself and called himself the no-no word that begins with an N. I had to fire him for it. I had to fire a young black guy for calling himself an N. Ironic. Yeah. I mean, and here's the thing: is like once you make that distinction, once you say that word is once you say you can be fired for using that word, then it has to be administered the same for everyone until you end up getting yourself fired for referring yourself in a way that you might prefer to be referred to. But all that to say, that's still not the worst thing in the world right now, right? That's still not, like, as terrible as that is. Like, hopefully that person left that job and went, and if the person has talents and ambition, they'll likely be, okay. I'm not saying that they're going to. I don't think that the particular job that they were let go from is the one that's going to make or break their career. Like, and they could probably write a novel about it and do just well, right? So again, we're having the conversations that we're having. It's just a little bit like should we impeach Donald Trump? Should we pass a clean air act, a clean water act that ensures that kids won't be drinking water with lead in it, right? So can we pass a clean air act so we don't have to all be walking around with masks over our faces, right? So, Michael and Ron, I'm not sure what you're responding to. Are there not laws that already require that? Thus a problem of enforcement. I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure. Oh, clean air laws. See, that's the problem. Is like that. I'm not saying clean. We don't. I'm not saying that we don't have laws on the books. We don't have any effective laws on the books. Clearly, because if I can pay money, if I can pay you money over there so that I can take up your pollution points, right? Nobody should have pollution points. Nobody should be able to put anything dangerous into the atmosphere at all. At all. At all. The first thing that happens, like as soon as you like, as soon as they see, like as soon as something is going somewhere that is deadly, that should be stopped right away, right? But not only that, the fact that we had, what was it a 500, 500, almost $600 billion like uh, war chest that was being requested. Man, how would like $200 billion in increasing our green energy infrastructure in the United States, what would that look like? Can we pass that bill? Can we pass that act? Um, it depends, though. If you want medicine, you got to put stuff in the air. Do you? Do you have to put stuff in the air? Or is it part of the process that exists now? Right? And I'm not saying that they could change all these things tomorrow, but they could start building the infrastructure, 5 weeks ago, right? And so, yeah, that's not what's clear to me, right? And like, if you want to talk about, a reparations package, give everybody access to clean, renewable energy. There's a reparations package that I think works for everybody. Because then it means the people who are getting that are then going to have a positive effect on everybody, right? So I don't know. Still probably won't save the polar bears though. Yeah, I don't, yeah. But yeah, I think you feel me. I think people feel me. Like in terms of like conversations that we're having right now seem to be a smokescreen to cover the fact that we're not having conversations about things that seem important. Or maybe that's the smokescreen. I don't know anymore. It's hard to know what's true. But I think that it should be all of our responsibility to continue pursuing that information and trying to find out what is true. Because it is far more important to me that people have clean water, access to clean water, including the animals, right? Have access to an environment that they can live in, right? That is way more important to me than someone who had their feelings hurt because they used a word, right? Let's be grown up. Somebody uses a word you don't like. Hey, quiet over there. I don't like that. Right? I don't know. We live in a world where, when my dog barks, right? When Jack starts barking, there's nothing that I can do about it, right? I can't pass a law that, says that the dog can't bark, right? It just doesn't make any sense. So, I don't know. I don't know. Dude, Akon gave so much water to a county in Africa compared to the charities that have been doing it for decades. I wonder what that was. Um, the Yellowstone supervolcano is going to erupt, and we're all effed no matter what. It's so terrible. Here's what's funny. I was driving yesterday. Um, call me out. I was driving yesterday, and while I was in the car, I was just struck with this giddy little thing, and I was just like, it's so great to have lived, right? It's so great to have lived and to have had like a life that is rewarding, right? It's so great to have those things. And if something were to happen, like, the Yellowstone supervolcano erupts and the world disappears or what have you, right? Which I hope doesn't happen for all of our sakes. But I feel like it's for the person who's just starting their life and having so many hopes and aspirations and not having, and not having achieved any of those things, You know, so almost like whatever happens now, I feel like I'm glad to have gotten to do a lot of the things that I wanted to do with my life. But that's why it's so important for y'all young folks to get y'all heads on straight now. Get it together. Get it together. You know, I have young nieces and nephews and things, and I care about all of that stuff. But there's nothing like, knowing that like my tomorrow is in jeopardy to get me off my butt to do something. So how is that going to happen? How is that going to happen? I see birthday cake and candles and all that stuff like that, and I'm not sure who that's for. If it's for my brother, then yay, I'm going to let him know that somebody made a cake. And if not, if it's just like a celebratory cake, what have you, it's all that. But yeah, so that's all that. That's all that about that. So we had a little conversation. We talked a bit about Donald Trump. So I hope that I've left folks with something to think about and to left things for people to respond in the comment section later on. Again, it's going to probably be until I get to Detroit before I start making regular content on the channel. So I hope that this is enough to hold people over, and if you can't watch an hour-long video, you can start a video and then come back to it. Like if you can only watch a 5-minute video, you can watch 5 minutes of the video and then you can think about it. Then you have like, 11 videos that you can watch, 12 videos that you can watch before, throughout the week, right? So you got 2 or 3 weeks worth of videos because I'm doing these long form videos. So that's what that is, right? Love Light Ananda says, where did that birthday cake come from? I don't know. You might have hit I'm going to say this. Whatever it is, I appreciate that birthday cake, and I thank you for it. Theo S says, super cool stream, Reg, and about the we needs change, about the means we make change, not the ends. I made and am eating breakfast during this broadcast. Well, that's good. That's good. I hope everybody's doing things to show themselves some love and appreciation. It was great to hang out with y'all this morning, as usual. So that's it for this video. Those of you watching on YouTube, like this video if you like it, share it, comment, subscribe. This is Reg signing off. Love to all of you. Peace.